with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It's Thursday, January 17th, 2019. My name is Michael Brooks, and I'm Michael Thursday, and this is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, Libby Watson, writer for Splinter. We're talking about Brexit, the failed no confidence vote, the failed May government, what comes next. Plus, why can't the New York Times just call Steve King a racist? And why the language of racially tinged points to a bigger media problem in the era of overt GOP white supremacy, plus Raj Shah's new lobbying gig in Amazon. We'll get to that. Nancy Pelosi continuing to show that she does know how to handle Donald Trump. She wants his State of the Union to be rescheduled because of the government shutdown. Not fair. And another thing not fair, Donald Trump's fast food summit didn't make much of a dent, apparently. His approval ratings are actually starting to slide with his base. We always wondered what would finally make that happen.
We're gonna need more burgers.
Civilians and U.S. troops were killed in a suicide bombing, which ISIS has claimed responsibility for in northern Syria. HUD official departs over a disagreement over the grotesque mishandling of Puerto Rico. Rudy Giuliani says Trump didn't collude with Russia, but can't say if campaign aides did or didn't. Authoritarian Turkey under authoritarian Erdogan seeks arrest for Enes Kanter. He's a New York Knicks center. They want an Interpol red notice on him in a horrifying abuse of really everything. AOC is going to teach other people in the House how to use Twitter, but is that really the point? She also used a drinking game analogy, we're going to call it, to explain how she's going to work the progressive agenda, and we like it.
You played quarters?
Yeah, what does that have to do with anything? Purdue, the Sheldon White House response. Purdue cemented ties with universities and hospitals to expand opioid sales, and Representative Sheila Jackson Lee might have sought retribution against a 19-year-old intern who tried to expose, who was raped by a coordinator for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation in a really, really obscene, grotesque story, which, if true, should certainly end Sheila Jackson Lee's career. Ed Case, he's a new whack congressman from Hawaii, and also he's apparently a white guy trapped, an Asian guy trapped in a white body. I guess he's the opposite of the other pejorative, banana, which I've heard, apparently. Two GOP congressmen stroll through the halls of Congress with a Holocaust-denying troll on the same day that everybody's coming together to condemn Steve King. All that and much, much more on today's Majority Report. Three of us here. Jamie is writing away. Sam's probably, I don't know, dealing with kid stuff and watching videos about his interactions with Dave Rubin.
He's seen your videos. We're definitely good. I know a lot of people want to make sure that
we have seen all of the Dave Rubin videos.
They're wonderful.
They're amazing.
Very good.
They're awesome.
It's everything we can do to not play them today.
Yes, and so we need to save them for Sam because
they're embargoed.
Things like that. Exactly. They're embargoed, and we also just want those videos probably expand the actuarial table on Sam's life. So we want
the vitality that enters him.
Yes. Sometimes he's sitting here and he's just like, God damn it, and I have to do that, and then God damn it, what? And then we're like, Sam, look. Somebody did it. It's a trap house beat, but it's Curb Your Enthusiasm. What's trap house? Is that like?
Is those the Chapo guys?
Is that the Chapo? Is that like? I remember, one time I met Run DMC, and it was with Sarah Silverman, and it was 1997. We go, oh my God, Jesus Christ! Please shut up. Just watch the video. And then we play the video, and then his whole body, he just gets a giant, big, huge grin on his face, and he's just like, that's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. That's pretty good. All right, what should I tweet? I'm going to tweet Ruben. I'm going to tweet him. What should I tweet? I think I'm going to say, and then we game out a tweet. So all of that's happening tomorrow. That was very funny. Wow. But look, all I can say is Dummy Dave, folks. Dummy Dave.
He's shook.
He's a shook dummy. It's like
shook dumbs.
Shook dumb. Steve Crowder's pretty goddamn shook too. It's
He's laying low.
He is really laying low. His whole little like I bother college students with nonsense hustles getting really disrupted by the fact that he's too much of a coward to debate Sam. You know, I'll say I'm not as into debates as Sam, but I will say I debated that friggin' Carl Sargon guy, and he didn't see that guy. Apparently, he seems to be he'll debate anybody, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's going to have to be a credit where credit's due type of thing. Like all of these guys are out here biting all that rhetoric about open exchange, but then two of the prime peddlers of it, Crowder and Rubin, can't even sit down. And look, Charlie Kirk showed up for Sam. Sam didn't. Sam certainly won the debate if you were watching and you had any semblance of knowledge. But Charlie Kirk left in a metaphorical body bag, but he didn't even know he left in a metaphorical body bag.
He earned that paycheck at least.
Yeah, I don't know. It does make, as much as I don't really like debate that much, and I don't really care to give people respect for things that should be obvious, but nonetheless, it makes you say, like, all right, I put Charlie Kirk in a different category than Crowder.
You know who the question's about now, though, is Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, no, the question's about Ben Shapiro, because the real question is, can you spend 5 minutes not bizarrely obsessing over Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Twitter and engage in a debate with Sam Seder?
We are going to obsess about Ben Shapiro the way he obsesses about AOC, because we want to get into those replies too. I like it's one thing to flood Dave and Steve's replies.
Bolsonaro. I don't really know much about that. I loved how he was like, oh, man. What a moron. Let's talk about the opposite of those guys. Somebody who's awesome, somebody who is great, and we all love. And it's true. It's really true. Super producer Matt and I always can keep up with each other on Instagram because we can see which pictures we're liking of this particular pop star. Cardi B finally intervened. By the way, I just want to remind everybody, has praised Bernie Sanders, Eleanor Roosevelt, the New Deal, backed Cynthia Nixon and Jumaane Williams over the Cuomo ticket. She's on point, and she's finally intervened in the government shutdown. This was on Instagram yesterday. Let's let Cardi B lay it out.
Hey, y'all, I just want to remind y'all, because it's been a little bit over 3 weeks, okay? It's been a little bit over 3 weeks. Trump is now ordering, as in summoning, federal government workers to go back to work without getting paid. Now, I don't want to hear y'all motherfuckers talking about, but Obama shut down the government for 17 days. Yeah, bitch. for health care. So your grandma could check her blood pressure, and you bitches could go check your pussy in the gynecologist with no motherfucking problem. Now,
Boss.
I know a lot of y'all.
I'm sorry, I forgot that part. I was going to say I shouldn't do a warning on this because I'm sorry. From my opinion, if you can't deal with a few F words, I don't know what to tell you. But I guess I should have given all right, if you have kids, you could either have your kids not listen to this or you could make them super cool at school.
This is a good way to broach these topics.
Yeah, exactly. This is it's a good way to get them both ahead of their classmates in terms of being cool and knowing pop culture and expanding the vocabulary in ways that they'll actually get social credit for, as well as a real practical introduction to the issues like the necessity of covering women's full gynecological care. Go ahead.
Your grandma could check her blood pressure, and you bitches could go check your pussy in the gynecologist with no motherfucking problem. Now, I know a lot of y'all don't care because y'all don't work for the government or y'all probably don't even have a job, but this shit is really fucking serious, bro. This shit is crazy. Like, our country is in a hellhole right now. All for a fucking wall. Like, we really need to take this serious. I feel like we need to take some action. I don't know what type of action, bitch, because this is not what I do, but, bitch, I'm scared. This is crazy, and I really feel bad for these people that gotta go to fucking work to not get motherfucking paid.
That's exactly it. 100%. I mean, look, I'm not, you can turn it into a comedy routine or whatever, but the truth of the matter is like it doesn't require that you use the same vocabulary to make that pretty fucking simple point. I mean,
I'd say that's better communication than Pelosi and Schumer.
It's better than 90%. There's nothing complicated about it. That's it. I mean, look, and basically, I mean, obviously it's different, but there's some formula like that is kind of that's one of the things that Ocasio-Cortez does, right? She just lays it out. It is crazy. It is demented. It is immoral. I mean,
and scary
and stupid and mortifying that some demented old trust fund baby demagogue who's never accomplished anything in his life is holding this country captive so he can build a delusional, racist, unnecessary, nonsensical wall on top of a border policy that's already cost children's lives. And now people who work for the federal government are going to be forced to work without pay, on top of which this could start affecting people very soon who rely on SNAP benefits and housing, like real people who are already terrorized through the economics of this country. It's scary, it's disgusting, it's stupid, and she's totally right. We'll be right back with Libby Watson on the Majority Report. Welcome back to the Majority Report. Michael Brooks here. Joining us now is Libby Watson. She's a writer for Splinter. Libby, how you doing? Thanks for doing this.
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So I want to talk, and let's use the your accent to maximum advantage and talk about Brexit first. It was a pretty intense last couple of days. Theresa May's Brexit proposal went down by a significant margin. I think it was like 404 to 200 or something like that. I know it's not the exact number, but it was a big loss. And then Jeremy Corbyn's motion of no confidence, which would have dissolved the May government and gotten us into elections, was rejected as well. The Lib Dems, which I guess are, how would you describe liberal Democrats to an American audience? What is that party like? Like, where would they be if they were in the United States, other than also irrelevant?
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically, they are, I think in American terms, they would still be pretty left. I mean, they're kind of similar to the Democrats. They're kind of what the sort of centrist to conservative side of the Democrats would be if they were a different party. They are also just like completely irrelevant these days. I mean, they haven't been in government. I mean, the Liberal Party was in government in the 1920s, and that's the last time they actually had a prime minister. Then they formed a coalition with the Conservative Party in 2010, and basically just like completely threw out everything that they supposedly stood for, including they campaigned on abolishing tuition fees and then signed off on the Conservatives tripling tuition fees. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know about them.
That does. That definitely tells you everything you need to know about them. And they refused to back Labor's no confidence vote. Their leader, Vince Cable, said since he's talking about Corbyn, appears determined to play party political games rather than acting on the wishes of his own members and MPs. And that is very ironic given what I mean, basically, like as you said, I think it was Nick Clegg became the deputy prime minister to David Cameron after running a campaign against university tuition fees and to protect social spending after the recession. Yeah, I mean, he signed, and then their bragging was like, oh, well, it was going to be like double worse in the private meetings. So, like, we should get credit for.
Right,
yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, they ran to the left to try and get any votes at all, and then went into government with a terrible conservative, austerity, social welfare slashing government.
So, and now they're opposing this Corbyn no confidence vote. So I guess, what's your sense of where this goes from here? I guess it's like, okay, so Corbyn wants to go to elections because this government has it's done, but the Tories won't. The Tories are still going to keep her there or maybe replace her with somebody else, but obviously they don't want to lose power. The Lib Dems, to the extent they have a few votes, are just concerned about remaining in the EU. And then, Tony Blair's back on the scene, being like, I think we need to have another referendum, blah, blah, blah. So, where, how do all these forces interact together, and what do you think, how do you think it's going to play out over the next couple of weeks? I
mean, I think the only truthful answer I can give is that I have no idea.
Yeah.
And no one has any idea. But I mean, I think the thing with Corbyn is that I think if it were, and this isn't to say that I would want it to be another Labour leader because I love Corbyn, but I think if it were a different Labour leader, then the dynamics may be slightly different, because I think the Lib Dems and the Tories are so terrified of a Labour victory, which I think would happen if there were an election. I think they're so terrified of a Labour victory that they won't do what the only reasonable thing to do is, which is to to call to support a no confidence motion or call for a general election or whatever. So that being the case, there's no force to push Theresa May out, which is incredible. I mean, her ability to hang on against all odds is really is quite astounding. So I mean, I really don't know, because the problem is that the EU, I don't see the EU budging or like giving a different deal. At the time that the deal was formed, they said like, this is the deal. If you don't like it, then goodbye. So I mean, my fear is that we end up with a no deal Brexit, because they just can't get it together, and it's only 6 weeks or 2 months or something until that happens. So I don't know. I mean, I think I'm going to tell my mum to start, stocking up on bananas and tomatoes, because I think we might end up with a no deal scenario.
And so, I mean, do you think that there's people? I know that like the business community obviously mostly opposed it because of how disruptive it is. But on the other hand, it's like, do you think that I don't know. I could see a lot of right-wing forces in the UK being like, all right, well, so like, here's the time to just become like, we're just going to try to be like the, Dubai or Singapore off of Europe. We're going to get rid of the NHS, and we're just going to be even like a more pure financial hub with like, closed borders.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I honestly, this whole, ever since the vote, I don't know what the kind of no deal crowd has been thinking. I mean, I think a lot of them, especially, not so much the sort of, actual British people that, would be okay with a no deal, but the Tory politicians that have gone in on it, I feel like they're, they did this for politically expedient reasons. Boris Johnson, for example, is a big, like, hard Brexit guy. And, he's not stupid. Like, he knows that a no deal would be terrible or whatever, but he's found it politically advantageous to position himself as a sort of posh version of Nigel Farage. And not that Nigel Farage isn't posh, but, Boris Johnson is like the poshest guy in the world. But now
look these people up if you haven't heard of them. They are really like, they're every British stereotype imaginable. If you don't know who, you probably know who Boris Johnson is. Some people might not know who Nigel Farage is, but how would you describe Nigel Farage to people?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, you might have seen him if you watch a lot of Fox News. Yeah. I'm guessing none of your listeners do.
Probably not.
He was the leader of the UK Independence Party, famous only for pushing for Brexit and for being horribly anti-immigration and anti-Islam. He's a sort of horrible frog-faced posh guy who like wanders around in wellies and drinks a pint and pretends to be all British, but of course has a German wife.
That son of a bitch. Are you serious?
Oh yeah.
He has a German wife. That's like the only way you should be anti-immigrant, is not having a German spouse.
In Britain, for sure.
Yeah, what a bastard. No, and elsewhere, Libby. Come on, let's be serious. No. I'm just playing. We actually do have a lot of German viewers. I apologize. Please don't be triggered. It was an opportunity to make fun of Nigel Farage, who is, I mean, honestly, really is like, this is a good time, I think, in general, obviously, because, Trump, Farage, Boris Johnson, people actually treated Bolsonaro like a joke in Brazil. There's a lot of people. There's no contradiction between being, a complete jackass and a figure of correct like mockery and ridicule, and also really evil and like given power to seriously harm people's lives. Like, there's no contradiction there.
Well, the funny thing about Farage is that, I mean, UKIP never had more than 3 or 4 MPs. He lost his he ran for Parliament last time, and he didn't win. And UKIP, even after the Brexit vote, has been kind of pretty sidelined. I think that's partly because of the Conservative Party and Theresa May kind of really going for the hard Brexit, that hard Brexit line. But this guy, like, no one, he has no power, and he keeps getting invited on telly to talk about Brexit, and people keep asking him what he thinks about Brexit. And it's like, this man is just a posh guy in a pair of wellies now. Like, you really don't have to ask him what he thinks.
I'm sorry. What are wellies? Oh, boots.
I'm sorry.
Oh, look at, no, it's all right. Matt Leck, our senior UK translator, got me. All right, they're boots.
Yeah, rain boots.
Yeah, he looks like a penguin in them. I have seen the boots. I just didn't know what they were called. two more UK related questions, and one is also going to just be another personality that people should probably know and not like, but then a bigger question. So I saw, and people probably have a sense that a guy named, David Cameron, who was another one of these like, hysterically posh and like, sort of gentry power inheritance figures in the UK. He became UK Prime Minister, I believe, in 2010. And he also, his whole first branding campaign was actually like, no, I'm like the pro-environment, like I'm super hip, I'm like a different kind of Tory. And in addition to just pounding and decimating the country with austerity, which is his prime legacy, he then, as a sop to the far right and to try to suck the oxygen out of UKIP and BNP, he basically was like, yeah, let's just have a Brexit referendum, which of course he lost. And then I don't think we have it on us, but we had a lot of fun when he resigned and the hot mic caught him walking off and just after resigning, he just hummed to himself. Do you remember that? He was like, doot, doot,
I remember that. Absolute sociopath.
Right. Yeah. So I saw the other day that he was in Costa Rica renting a surfboard.
Great. That's great. I mean, honestly, I was talking to my friend about this the other night. He's really played it very smart because, like, I think he will be, even though this is all completely his fault, I think history will kind of forget him. Like you say, that this is all because of him. I think there was a Financial Times article at the time that revealed that he decided to do this at a pizza restaurant in Chicago O'Hare Airport. Just kind of on a whim, like you say, to shore up, because he thought that, that would be the end of it all, and it super wasn't. But now, like you say, he's surfing in Costa Rica. Meanwhile, Theresa May is having, an absolute nightmare. And, believe me, I loathe Theresa May. I don't actually care that she's personally experiencing a nightmare. But, I think she will be remembered for handling this very poorly, whereas I think David Cameron's kind of gotten away with it by resigning and just disappearing.
It's do. All right, we got to get that back, man. That is one of the most amazing. Like, I just totally messed everything up. Do.
My actual favorite Cameron hot mic was when they caught him on a hot mic making fun of Yorkshire, which is in the north of England, and he's from the south of England, very posh. A lot of north-south tension in the UK, and he sounds even posher when he's like in private than he does in public. Like Jesus. In the UK, at least for let's say in the 70s, people would pretend to be posher than they were. Like Margaret Thatcher apparently learned how to speak with a more posh accent because she wanted to like fit in with all the Tories. But I think David Cameron actually toned down the posh when he's talking to the public because he's so posh, so elite that he just sounds ridiculous.
All right, so David Cameron and Boris Johnson, these two, and obviously as an American, I'll just throw around, it's pure speculation as I'm mindful of UK libel laws, but I would speculate potentially inbred children of unbelievable privilege. Yeah, they just did Brexit. And now another, incredibly bizarre and horrific. And anybody who ever feels bad for Theresa May, just look up Windrush on Google, and any sympathy you have for her will completely evaporate. But my last question about this is, okay, I think you're totally, my sense, and obviously you know better than me, but my sense is that yes, almost any other labor leader, there would probably be elections happening right now because this is catastrophic and there's no credibility left in this government, and you can have a snap election, right? And okay, and I obviously I support Jeremy Corbyn too. I'm not sure he's handling every part of Brexit correctly, but I also know that Brexit isn't the only thing. And I know his plans to reverse austerity and workers' cooperatives. I mean, he's providing actually some incredible ideas and speaking to the big issues of our time. And he definitely would be, no doubt in my mind, a better prime minister and a very good prime minister compared to certainly, obviously, Theresa May. But just even in the normal rules of politics, when you have a total failure, you make a change. And in this process of total fear that all of the UK establishment, I guess, just use that word, has about Jeremy Corbyn, they're prolonging and intensifying like an actual crisis. So it's like, I guess it's like, doesn't that juxtaposition actually prove all of like Corbyn's points about this ruling class? It's like, oh, if Jeremy Corbyn's prime minister, it's going to be like Venezuela. So what we'll do is make it like what we say Venezuela is like right now, to not have this guy, to not have an election or democratic accountability. We will accelerate an actual crisis, not a hypothetical one, to not live out our fears, which we've made up in our own heads.
Right, exactly. No, I totally agree. And, I agree that I don't think Corbyn has handled Brexit quite as well as he could have. And, I mean, it is difficult because there are a lot of issues with, a lot of the kind of more Blair wing of the party want him to call for another referendum. And that is, I mean, the thing is like, I think, they kind of want all this to be over and for us to go back to how it was before, which, like, I understand, because there's no way that Brexit is going to sort of benefit the UK. Like, any scenario is going to be, we're going to be worse off. Having said that, the EU is not a good institution. And I think Corbyn is kind of that old 80s left mold, like really, really left, and hating the EU for that reason.
For the right reasons.
For the correct reasons, exactly. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that Brexit would be good, or that that would be the best way for Britain to change the EU. So it is tricky, and I don't know, because he's also in a difficult place, because if we call another referendum and we get the same result, then like what have we done then? Then it's like that would be even worse, and I don't know that there would be a different result. So it is tricky. But I, like I said, like big Corbyn supporter. I think I'm 100% confident he would handle this better. But like you say, they're all completely terrified of him. I mean, if you go back and look at the way that the media reacted when Corbyn was elected party leader in 2015, it's actually remarkably similar to the way that the media reacts to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez now. Yeah. Just any little story, any little, theoretical inconsistency in his leftism. There was one of the big stories was that, like, he went to some veterans event and like ate the sandwiches and he wasn't supposed to, or something like that, which was amazing.
Disaster.
And there was the whole thing about like not kneeling before the Queen or something, and like not singing the national anthem and stuff. And this was all like mainstream papers that were reporting this. This wasn't like our version of the Daily Caller. It was like our version of, I don't know, the New York Post or even the Washington Post.
Right.
It's like
wow.
completely balmy like stuff, and like sort of just trying to make any kind of argument that he either was inappropriately un-British, or trying to catch him out, being a weird. There was a lot of reporting on him being just like a weird guy, like he wears jumpers a lot and has a collection of manhole.
What are jumpers? Jumpers.
Sorry,
and
sweaters.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm learning.
Yeah.
Well, then there was that time when he promised and I think it was in 2016, where he said he was going to run train on the socialist agenda. That caused a lot of heat.
I wish he had done that.
What about Urban Dictionary, Mr. Corbyn?
Yeah. That would have been even funnier than her doing it. Yeah.
That would have been. I mean, it would be very hard for me to support him even more. That's particularly funny because there is a parallel universe where I could hear Bernie Sanders saying that. There's none where I could hear Jeremy Corbyn saying that.
No. No, not at all.
Okay, so all right, yeah. I mean, we'll just keep pushing for, and I mean, he should be prime minister, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And I hate that it happens this way because it caused a lot of harm. But I mean, every piece of any credibility that the business, the press class, the political class had is gone. So think about that while they hyperventilate about this guy.
Right.
You wrote a great. I just want to take in the last like 10 minutes or so, a couple of recent pieces you wrote. You wrote this piece called "The New York Times Racially Tinged Problem." I thought that was great. Can you just kind of outline it for us?
Yeah, I mean, this is a frequent problem with the New York Times, but also other outlets. But yesterday they wrote a piece about, which should have been, I think, quite a good piece about sort of, Republicans are condemning Steve King for racism, but why not Donald Trump, which is an interesting point. But in doing that, they did what they always do and described things Donald Trump has said as having, racially tinged remarks. And it's just so frustrating because that phrase doesn't mean anything. Like, racially tinged doesn't tell you, I mean, for a start, it doesn't convey the full weight of what Donald Trump has said. I mean, I just, I put the excerpt from his campaign announcement speech in there and, describing Mexicans as rapists and criminals. Like, That isn't racially tinged. That's racist. And I think the inability of the media to describe the things he says as racist is not, that is important. That matters. And I think, as Adam Serwer has pointed out, that is more about preserving the feelings of a largely white audience than it is, about accurately describing the situation. And it's just very frustrating to see the Times do it over and over again.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and I wonder about even like I think that the polling at least shows that at least how people answer poll questions, this sort of like, and this shows up on a lot of areas, but like a kind of like mushy middle is at least, I think, in practice, there's still a lot of it, but at least polling wise, you see more like people who identify as conservative being like, essentially like, yeah, that explicitly racist sentiment expresses my thoughts. And then you see more people who identify as Democrats or whatever, who are definitely, I mean, look, white Democrats, at least in polls, they're way more willing to acknowledge, or I won't even say that because I don't necessarily think it's cynical. They're more at a point now than they were, say, 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, where they're like, yes, racism is a major, important force in our society and our politics. Mm-hmm. So I feel like when they write this and they use this language, it obscures the truth, sounds ridiculous, it doesn't mean anything. It is kind of like goofily Orwellian. But it's like, even that sort of imagined person, like, who are you talking to besides Barry Weiss? Like, literally.
Yeah, I mean, that's a general New York Times problem because they're always writing things
right
as if they have, any Republican readers, and I'm sure that they have some, but Republicans aren't going to not think that the Times is biased because you say things like racially tinged. Like, and, that's the other thing that was terrible about that article that was honestly as bad, that it included a part saying that, well, Democrats, some Republicans say that Democrats didn't condemn the motherfucker comments, and, they don't police the words they use either. And it's like, well, don't you, like, I mean, that is obviously absurd on its face. The idea that saying there are very fine people on both sides of Charlottesville is in any way equivalent to saying we're going to impeach the motherfucker. Like, that is, like, that's offensive. And if you're writing an article like that, then you have to include, you have to say which is ridiculous. Like, I would never, even if a Republican was saying that to me, I would never quote them as saying that without saying this is wrong.
Right. I mean, of course, obviously they could focus on Rashida Tlaib's comments where she said, Arab civilization created algebra, and there's nothing wrong with thinking that they're inherently superior because that's just history. That would be an equivalent if she said anything like that. Right. I mean that. Well, and not only are you right about that, they're actually. When they repeat the motherfucker is analogous to Steve King just being a racist or Donald Trump just being a racist, they are not only is it's not even a ridiculous, immoral, ludicrous false equivalency. It's just a laundering of Republican talking points because that's what they're doing. And when you see Kevin McCarthy and people like that on TV, they're not saying, and hosts are not saying, well, great, I'm glad you're stripping him of his assignments, but why did you back this guy, and why did Chuck Grassley record an ad for him a couple of weeks before he was facing re-election? They're immediately pivoting and saying, well, we wish the Democrats would do the same thing, by which they're talking about Rashida Tlaib saying MFer. So not only like it's ridiculous on its face, but they're saying that's a Republican spin that has been cooked up by some Republican pollster or something. So not only are you doing a false equivalency, you're actually just laundering GOP talking points with nothing critical to say about it.
Right, exactly. And like this is the thing. It's, you know, in journalism, obviously, it's, I guess it's important to know what Republicans are saying, like if they are saying that. But the thing is like they're saying it to you, New York Times reporter, so that you will put it in the New York Times as if that argument has any weight. Like they're making that argument in bad faith, and you don't have to help them by doing their PR for them. If you're going to put it in an article, then you have to do something to note that like that's completely insane. Like it doesn't matter that Republicans are arguing it. Like that doesn't make it worthy of like noting without any context. You know, it's like obviously absurd on its face, and journalists have to know when they're able to say, you know, this thing that they say, which is insane, you know.
Right. And that's, again, that's descriptive. That's not like, it's not partisan. It's an ability to make some type of actual analysis here. Because if not, like, then, I don't know, just try to figure out the whatever AI can make Siri write New York Times articles for you or whatever, which would still probably produce more interesting work than Barry Weiss, which is a hacky joke, but I had to make it. You congratulated Raj Shah on his new lobbying position. Would you remind everybody who he is and what the new gig is?
Yeah, so he was deputy press secretary to Sarah Sanders, and now he's going to be heading up a media group doing, let's read this, bipartisan full-service multidisciplinary strategic communications division, which is just, I mean, I guess that makes sense to people in DC, but whatever. But the important thing is that the group he's going to is called Ballard Partners, and Ballard Partners is run by this guy Brian Ballard, who is an associate of Trump before he moved to D.C. Then Trump became president, and this guy took his lobbying shop from Florida to D.C. And, you know, there were a couple of articles about him last year where he kind of insisted that he was almost offended by the idea that he would trade on his access as a lobbyist. And, you know, say, well, yes, I have dinner with Trump every few weeks, but, you know, people come to me for my expertise and for my lobbying prowess, not because of my contacts, which is just obviously absurd.
No, I mean, we would never question his expertise, obviously, and I'm sure people are interested in
Absolutely.
Well, haven't you? I mean, Libby, why are you so cynical when you could be doing multidisciplinary thinking with somebody?
I know. I'm really just jealous. I'm very jealous that Ballard Partners hasn't hired me to be a full-service strategic communicator, I guess. But yeah, they are. I mean, this you know, it really gets to the question, and I actually wrote about this at the time that he was profiled last year. It gets to the question of, like, what are lobbyists doing? Like, what do they do all day? You know, obviously, I mean, there are some lobbying firms that get hired. You know, companies retain them to, you know, some of the work they do is kind of like, you know, research and, like, informing members of Congress. And literally what they will do is, like, create research packets for congressional staff, which are all underpaid and overworked. And then, you know, the information they get is from lobbyists. And, you know, because they don't have time to assemble it themselves, they'll just use whatever, you know, Ballard Partners or whoever sent over. But, you know, it's obvious that the reason that this firm is doing so well with, you know, many millions of dollars in income a year is because of the closeness to Trump. I mean, Amazon, for example, already has 15 other lobbying firms on retainer. So why would they pay a 16th firm, Ballard Partners, you know, over $200,000 in 2018 to lobby? And it's clear that, you know, that's a connection to Trump that is worth a couple $100,000 to them. You know, that's just like one other avenue to Trump or whoever in that White House that is worth $200,000 to be able to access.
Yeah, and this is the type of Trump era story where it's like this definitely, like, there's things that are obviously weird and unusual and very different about Trump. But there's a lot of other things where it's just like an amplification of what already is. And this type of dynamic is totally bipartisan and basically across the board in D.C. I like, though, the Amazon part of it, though, because it's like this is another good thing to remind people of. It's like, okay, like Trump is beefing with Jeff Bezos on Twitter, and the Washington Post publishes all sorts of reporting that Trump doesn't like, some of which is, good reporting. But the other dynamic that's much more reflective of reality is that Amazon, as a rapacious, monopolistic company, which hires all sorts of influence peddling firms to do all sorts of work, both nationally and locally, is paying off some actually pretty marginal firm before Trump to get access to him. And that's like the bigger truth than, whatever Trump's like freaking out about on Twitter about Jeff Bezos getting divorced or whatever.
Oh yeah, no, I mean 100%. It's really frustrating to see people like reflexively side with Jeff Bezos against Trump, as if you have to pick one, and as if Jeff Bezos is anything but just like Lex Luthor. Like he's one of the worst people in the world and is the richest person in the world. So no good.
He's on both lists, and there's so much overlap in that list. It's actually that's a worst person and richest person lists are very cross-pollinating. Libby Watson, I really appreciate your time. I hope we can do this again. Read all of Libby's work at Splinter and follow her on Twitter and everywhere else you follow people. Libby, thanks so much for doing this.
Of course, thank you. Happy to be here.
You too. Take care. All right, folks. I learned 2 new British words. What were they again?
Was it jumper and
wellies?
Wellies.
You wear wellies to Glastonbury.
You wear wellies to Glastonbury.
They're like those big rain boots that you pull up to your knees.
I knew exactly. No, because I've noticed. Because I've seen pictures of Farage. I knew what you were talking about as soon as you guys explained it to me. I just had no idea. Yeah, he is some like Thatcherite multimillionaire asshole. Become a member of the Majority Report today, majority.fm/become a member. That's how this show happens. Join the show for pennies a day. Get your coffee, fair trade tea, coffee, chocolate at the great co-op, justcoffee.coop. It's real fair trade stuff. Everybody, even Starbucks tried to co-opt that brand, but Just Coffee actually does it. They're our friends. They support the show, and they provide great actual pro-labor, pro-ecology, pro-worker cooperative products, which are delicious. That's the coffee we drink. It's the coffee that powers the Majority Report ship. Get your tickets to the Michael Brooks Show live show February 1st. We're excited to see you there. This Sunday, David Adler, he's on the governing body of DM25, which is the pan-socialist effort across Europe. We're talking about migration, left nationalism, and critiquing it using Marx. You got to become a patron of TMBS to get all of that and countless other pieces of historical, theoretical, global content, plus the very fun, very entertaining. On this last post game, we dunked on Jimmy Dore. We talked about Buju Banton, right-wing Mandela Gavin McGinnis. Patreon.com/TMBS. Subscribe to Michael Brooks Show on YouTube and tell those motherfuckers to monetize us. Got to figure that out. That's actually really quite weird. Matt was pointing out the other day how there's still people selling like fake cancer cures that are monetized on YouTube. Actually,
like verified, which
and
Majority
verified?
Report isn't even verified on YouTube.
Wow. Well, that says a lot.
But you can apparently cure pretty late stage cancer with baking soda, according to YouTube.
Right.
Things that they'll monetize. So
yeah, but you wouldn't want to put an ad into a smart Brexit analysis or a video on the political imprisonment of Lula. Patreon.com/TMBS, Michael Brooks Show on YouTube, and of course on iTunes and so on. And see you at the live show. Matt.
Literary Hangover coming this weekend. Hopefully I'll get it up by Saturday. Recording tonight, The House of the Seven Gables, which is probably, I think, the most interesting thing I've read by Hawthorne. Maybe the most interesting thing I've read for this entire project. A lot of interesting inheritance stuff going on, about stuff about politics and corruption. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting. Patreon.com/Literary Hangover. Correct. Check out The Antifada, Jamie and Sean. In the spirit as well, that's The Antifada on Patreon. Patreon.com/The Antifada. In the spirit of the opening of the show, we were talking about dopes who won't debate Sam. Here is a brilliant video that Brian McAllister did about one of those dopes that won't debate Sam. It's going to take you into the fun half where we will see you there.
And I do like to think that, it's really hard to get leftist guests on our show. That's just a reality. We try and book them.
Crowder doesn't think there's a rape culture.
I usually do try and get into an engagement of ideas.
Steven Crowder, so interesting.
Now that we're talking about Steven Crowder, 3 or 4 months ago, I was invited to Politicon. When they asked me if I would come, I said, yeah, I will, if I can debate someone. Now, of course, I threw out Dave Rubin, and I was told that he's not coming. Competition would start kicking in. And so I said, Crowder, and the people were like, great. And it all looked good. And I was told that Steven Crowder literally stopped responding to their emails. Pretty sure the quote was, somebody got cold feet. Steven Crowder, I am issuing you a challenge to debate. I will host you on any time, any platform, any way to debate. Really, the question that Steven Crowder should ask his Alexa is, do I have the fortitude to debate Sam Seder?
No, you are not courageous enough to face a middle-aged Jew who likes facts and figures. You are a coward.
Steven, I know you are watching or hearing this, and everybody else knows it too. There's no way you're not aware that I've issued this challenge now. You knew it was coming when you backed out of Politicon because you were afraid of debating me, and here it is. Steven, we'll see you soon.
Maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but you can wear your not gay t-shirt and you can have an opening statement, right?
Oh.
You'll let him have the opening statement, I'm assuming.
Oh, sure.
Welcome to the fun half. Every time Steven Crowder does one of his change my mind things on Twitter, he's like, I think he's pretty much always ratioed now by people saying, why don't you change Sam Seder's mind? And still no response.
It's the Majority Report Flying Monkey Army.
Indeed. And then, of course, there's the Bull Snefru. Bulsarinu. A preview to what's to come tomorrow, folks. We'll probably start. Oh, I should have said this in the fun half, in the first half. My bad. Maybe we'll tack this in, but we're starting at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Early start time tomorrow. So I totally spaced. We all totally spaced, but early start time tomorrow, 11 a.m.
I'll put it in the blog.
Okay, yeah, and we'll probably spend about 30 or 40 minutes talking about Dave Rubin and the latest hijinks and playing all of the brilliant, hilarious videos.
We're starting early because we got a lot of Dave Rubin remixes to
Yeah, exactly. We need to get to every Dave Rubin remix. You're calling from a 347 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello, 347. Are you there?
Hello?
Hello, 347. Are you there?
Hello?
Yes.
We had your chance.
When we say your area code, that means you're on.
Yeah,
you don't need to ask.
Right. You're calling from a 781 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Hey, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Actually, I'm from Massachusetts, so I got the kind of local connection here. I'm from the South Shore town called Pembroke.
Oh, nice. What's on your mind?
So, yeah. Well, I've been listening to you guys for about 7-8 months now, and believe it or not, the way I caught on to you guys was I had heard a friend of mine he got into, like, Sam Harris and all this stuff, so he's like, you gotta listen to this guy, he's really onto something, and I'm listening to it, I'm like, this guy is, I don't know what's going on. I could tell he was bullshitting, so I was looking for somebody who would criticize him, so I went on YouTube, I typed his name in, and you guys came up with about 5 or 6 different YouTube videos criticizing him, so
nice,
and making fun of him. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to check this out.
Good. I like it.
Actually, the first real impression that there were 2, the Boris Epstein, and my favorite though, the one that is my favorite, and in a way I'm glad he's out of the White House, but in a way I'm not because you don't hear him on TV as much, is Gorka.
I miss Gorka,
the Gorka
too.
impression.
We all miss. Actually, last week, Steve Cook and I were lamenting the disappearance. I mean, Gorka's gotten so obscure so quickly that it doesn't even. It's just like you just have to shoehorn that impression. Like there isn't even a context to do it in.
I worked for him. Yes, I was a politically commissioned officer.
I worked for him. Yes, I was a politically commissioned officer. Yes. I was in the Quiznos parking lot masturbating. Yes, that's true. I don't know why there's anything wrong with that. It's only in the PC culture that says you can't be jerking off in your Thunderbird.
I imagine Gorka's pretty upset about the Syria withdrawal plans.
No, I would imagine he is whatever Trump says. But you know what? What's interesting to me about Gorka is that his ideas on Middle East and security are quite similar to Sam Harris's. And what's funny is like the only difference, but there's actually like 3 differences there. One is like, okay, look, sure, if this, I know, because people get still like unbelievably triggered and weird about any Sam Harris criticism, which is probably something good to sort of self-assess in and of itself. If like there should be no, right, like if somebody likes, right, is like, hey, I'm a fan of Michael Brooks, whatever, and somebody's like, nah, that guy's, he's an asshole, and I don't agree. Like you can debate that person and that's great, but it shouldn't like shake your emotional and existential foundations the way it seems to affect people with Sam Harris and, obviously Jordan Peterson, which is, weird and bizarre in and of itself. But, so I'll do this though. Okay. Like, sure. Generically, of course, Sam Harris, I'm sure, is a smarter guy than Sebastian Gorka. Okay. If people need that obvious fig leaf there. On the other hand, their actual thinking about this is extremely similar, which is like, it's Islamic terrorism. You need to call it what it is. And Islam is a thing. And history and sociology are irrelevant. And then number 3, actually, I'm sure Gorka has much more like knowledge of South Asia and the Middle East, just in his own like, reading of like WorldNet daily blog posts. He probably, like, if you gave them like a Jeopardy quiz on like names of like heads of state and like lines of succession in Egypt or something, he'd probably score better than Sam Harris. But
I don't doubt it. But
yeah.
Oh, I didn't want to cut you off, but
no, go ahead.
Part of my backstory, I didn't really.
Oh yeah, go ahead, man.
That,
What's your question, buddy?
Basically, it just comes down to I had a, I guess you could say, through your guys' comedy and just kind of listening and in the whole Trump era, I've actually had sort of a like I said, a revelation. I didn't really have any strong political feelings, but I grew up in a family that would be definitely center-right just by, like, tradition.
Right.
I don't know if, like, some people it's just, like, it's in there. And even, like, when I was in, like, high school and stuff and I kind of reflexively back some center-right positions, I didn't feel right doing it. It just, and then the Trump era has just opened my eyes and ears so much to just how cravenly, like, evil people are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you get to see the underlying philosophy. These people are monsters.
Yeah.
And humor helps expose monsters for who they are. But it's just, I'm just beside myself, living, I'm only in my early 30s, and it's like, what the hell's going to happen in this country in the next, 20 years. I'm scared to death, but hey, if I can laugh along the way,
Well, we should laugh, and we
better for
definitely
it.
have a lot of work to do, man.
What's your name?
Oh, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate your call, man.
Yep.
Thanks, Paul.
Yep,
That
take
was
care.
great. Good stuff.
Right with you, Paul.
Good
Solidarity, Paul.
Gonna laugh all the way down to the bottom of the sea.
Right. You're calling from a 720 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 720.
David from Denver.
Sorry, tell me again. I'm sorry. Hello?
David from Denver.
Hey, David, what's on your mind?
Hi, I was wondering, why do you think the left has been so silent in regards to Rojava? Notice most of them were like cheering on the withdrawal from Syria. There's that saying that like broken clock is right twice a day.
Mm-hmm.
With the U.S. and so many countries, you'd think like maybe they'd be right like once like in those 30 countries. The left seems to not recognize this and actually very like defensive against the idea that this could even happen. So,
well,
why do you think they're so silent and like supporting the left in other countries?
Well, have you followed my coverage on this? I mean, I can only really attest to myself, but I definitely am in solidarity with Rojava, and I definitely think that for the time being, there should be some troop presence that continues there to protect them from Turkish imperial aggression, murder, and support them as they continue this experiment. And then I guess, for purposes of the United States, obviously the fact that they're the most effective fighting force against ISIS. But the reason, there's good reasons and bad reasons. Good reason is, in general, the big picture, obviously the United States is an imperial force. It's interfering with and destabilizing and committing civilian casualties across the globe, from Somalia to Venezuela. The whole broader engagement in Syria, whether it was backing groups through the Gulf or our own really aggressive air campaign, was wrong. Just as, of course, if we're talking on an ethical and legal level, so of course is the incredible, massive Russian body count and aggression there as well, as an example. So, some people just see that and they just want to get out and pull out, and that's smart in some respects. It reflects some decent instincts. But then there's also a really basic dividing line here. I want to bring more people over to the side of a true global solidarity politics. And, that can get a little bit ethereal at times. I understand, sometimes people need to deal with their own communities and their own contexts first and foremost. I don't have any objection to that. But I do think that for an actual left project, there is an internationalist component to it. There's a global component to it. And certainly when you have a group like the PYG and the Kurds in Rojava, and some of the things that they've been able to accomplish and what they're attempting, they clearly are, for a variety of reasons, those we should have solidarity with and support. And in addition, I think this broader, some of these themes are coming up in this book I'm writing, and I think that I'll just, as a tease for it, like, I'll let you go, man. Thanks so much for the question. I think that there's a internationalist cosmopolitanism is a great answer to both sort of the right-wing kind of ahistorical sort of smuggling of racism and reductionism through, as well as some of the real pitfalls and failures of what some people call identity politics in modern usage. There's the whole other realm that's opened in a material way through a global Marxist tradition, but also through people who focus much more explicitly on sources of democratic legitimacy, community, identity, writers like Anthony Appiah and Amartya Sen that help transcend and get to a better place in that debate. But, that's where I'm coming from, and that means that you have solidarity with Rojava. And as I've said in other contexts, it also means that even as, of course, I oppose and object to U.S. imperialism. I also oppose and object to Turkish, Chinese, Russian, any imperialism. And I also think that people on the periphery, in any sense, need to use what tools are available. So if the tool available for the idea that some people sitting on their asses here would be criticizing the Rojava Kurds for having like an alliance of convenience with the United States so that they can have a political experiment and not be ethnically cleansed is, it's immoral, it's stupid, it's delusional, it's every adjective I can throw at it. And conversely, as I've said before, if a Chinese presence in Latin America helps as a counterweight against U.S. and certainly Brazil under this new fascist regime would back the efforts to have a coup in Brazil and Venezuela, then good. Venezuela should take that support from whether it be China or Russia. So it's some fusion of real global solidarity and then actually being a little bit savvy and a little bit thoughtful about how power plays out in different contexts. And just having a one-dimensional, I don't like the U.S. isn't going to get you to a real place of solving problems. You're calling from a 408 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? .408, are you there? All right. You're calling from a 509 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael. This is Ronald Reagan.
The great Ronald Reagan, MVP caller. How are you?
Thanks, man. Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to be talking with you.
Thanks. The Trump McDonald's thing or fast food thing reminded me of how he likes to eat steak with ketchup, and it's like an example of how he's really sort of got this infant mind still. Like my nephews, one of my sisters does not feed her kids very well, and like we'll have, like one time they came over and we had Indian food, and we got them butter chicken, which is really just like chicken with sweet buttery sauce.
Right. And
they wouldn't eat it because it's not like wrapped in paper.
Jesus.
And so she had to take them out afterwards to get, whatever, McDonald's or something. And it just strikes me that like the president has a child brain, and he was so excited about that dinner because as president, he's forced to sit at all these dinners and things with like actual food. And he saw this as an opportunity to like, he thought that everyone was going to be on board because he sort of projects his own infant brain onto other people. But
because I'm a narcissist.
Anyways,
it reminds me of, I don't remember, I wish I could remember more of the specifics, but there was some summit in South Korea. And, of course, at all these summits, you get served great food. But, like, it was something like, I think there was, like a soy sauce that had been, like, aged for, like, 100 years or something. It was some type of, like, it sounded like one of the most incredible meals one could, like, conceive of. Like, if you were just, like, I want to have this, like, really amazing, and there would be this and there would be that, and this thing would be aged for this amount of time. And I think I don't know what I think he basically just like, can I get steak?
They got burgers eventually, I think.
Yeah. It's like
he went to the bathroom and ate a Butterfinger that was in his pocket.
Right. It's like you know what it is? It's actually because we were talking about how it's 20 years Sopranos, like anniversary time. And there's that great scene in Italy. It's like the great arc of Paulie Walnuts actually just having like a terrible trip in Italy is one of the funniest things that ever happened on The Sopranos. And one of the things is he's at a basement, and it's like this real, like, not a basement. It's like a private, like they have the restaurants cleared out. It's this beautiful Italian trattoria, and it's a mafia dinner. And, one could only imagine how good the food, like you want Italian food just looking at what they're eating. And then he tries to say, like, to the waiter, he's just like, is there any way I could just get some pasta and gravy? And they're just like, gravy, what's gravy? And then he goes, tomato sauce. And then one of the guys is like, not gravy, blah, blah, blah. And he tells the waiter what to get. And then he looks at his friends and he's like, and we thought Germans were like classless pieces of shit.
Yeah, exactly. Bring me some SpaghettiOs.
Yeah, right.
Hey, I wanted to tell you a story real quick. I've called in about this client I have who was arrested in October. She's a single mother of 6, and she has a 5-month-old baby. And they detained her because of a 2008 deportation at the border. So 10 years ago, she tried to come in and was deported, and that makes her subject to detention. So we were trying all throughout October to get her released, which they're allowed to do. She has some pending relief, and she's got 6 kids and was like nursing her baby. And all of this information we sent to ICE, please just let this person out, put an ankle monitor on her, whatever you need to do. And they refused. And so she's got what amounts to, it's similar to asylum, but basically an asylum hearing in February that I'm trying to get ready for. It's, another form of relief that she qualifies for. And, so she's had to wait since October. She's still detained. And I got an email this morning from her removal officer saying she's now undergoing a new custody review because it's been 90 days, and they want me to answer all these questions. And the questions are like, first of all, they're things that have already answered. Things like, does she have a place to live? Does she have family in the United States? But then there's other questions like, what's her employment history, her educational level? Does she have any vocational training? And it's like, I don't know if they're going to let her out now that they've had 90 days to think about it, but it shows exactly how arbitrary this is and how we're locking people up literally for no reason. If after 90 days you can just reassess, and, literally nothing has changed. And I think it really gets to the heart of the arbitrary nature of what we're doing. But so hopefully she gets out. That would be great, although it's annoying because I've been, working on these briefing deadlines for a while. But our policy is really fucked. I guess I've made that point before, but
no, but it needs to keep being made. Is there something going on with that? The bail, like that sort of like revolving bail. Yeah. Could you remind everybody about that?
Yeah. So we raised about $15,000 for one of my clients who bonded out. I think it was back in October. I have a website and a nonprofit organized through the state. So I've got all that stuff in place. I applied for nonprofit status from the IRS and back in October, and it's just pending. And so I'm waiting to get nonprofit status so that people who contribute can deduct their contributions from their taxes. And once that's in place, I'll make a sort of more formal launch of the website and everything. But the guy who bonded out is, doing good. He's working. His first hearing's not till, I think, next month, but if the government's still shut down, who knows? So, that's what's going on with that. It's been frustrating. I called the IRS about a month and a half ago, and they just said, yeah, we have your paperwork, and it's pending. So that's that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, and also, of course, listen to The Redirect, Immigration Law and Perspectives, great podcast, which I listen to on the reg. Thanks, Ronald.
Thanks for the plug. Take care.
No, thank you. Wait,
I also have to thank, Ronald Reagan for, he sent me the Drinking Man's Diet Cookbook, the successor to the phenomenal bestseller, The Drinking Man's Diet.
I was going to ask if that was the follow-up to The Drinking Man's Diet.
Yeah, it is.
That's wow.
It looks like it came out maybe in the 70s. So thank you, Ronald Reagan, for this. I'm appreciative.
You're calling from a 301 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, what's up, Michael? It's Vic from Maryland.
Hey, Vic, what's going on? What's on your mind?
A lot. So basically, I don't know. I just want to talk about like the experience that a lot of people around DC, in the suburbs of DC, are having right now.
Yep.
Because there's just a ton of people around here who work for the federal government, and both people in the household do.
Yep.
And so, like my household, my neighbors, like two of my neighbors, there's no income coming in.
Right.
And everyone's panicking. Like, it's kind of surreal. Like, people are just talking about, what are we going to, and this is a pretty affluent neighborhood, but people are, worrying about the rent and car insurance. And it just goes to show that even if you're, a white collar worker, you make, $80,000, $100,000 a year, people are still living paycheck to paycheck at that income level.
Definitely.
It's, so I just want to, let everyone know that, I'm not trying to be like, oh, well, it sucks for us, up here up in the middle class too. But I mean,
no,
it sucks for everyone right now with the shutdown.
It does. I don't think, look, we need to expand. I mean, there is a demonization and lack of focus on poverty and the poor in this country, which is striking, and people need to have a much more clear understanding of poverty across the board. There's no doubt. But then conversely, I mean, look, the 99 versus the 1% formulation is very smart. It's both correct in a lot of ways and, savvy politics. We need to have some basic grand premises that there can be massive across the board organizing around. Things like Medicare for all, obviously, things like free college, things like, student debt relief, things like, in fact, the Green New Deal, free public transportation. I mean, all of this stuff actually, when you really branch out the implications of these things, it has massive implications positively for almost everybody across the board who aren't essentially oligarchs. And, this is a dynamic in a different context. Chris Hayes put his finger on some of this in Twilight of the Elites, which is a good book. People should read that book. And he talks about how, out of the financial crisis, there was also a lot of people who had been, what Bill Clinton called people who work hard and play by the rules. And unfortunately, Elizabeth Warren echoes some of that rhetoric, which is something I don't like that she's doing. And, this idea that like, maybe I'm upper middle class, I work hard, I did all the things that you're supposed to quote unquote do. And now like my kid's going to not ever make more money than me. Things are just, things have just generally across the board, just downscaled and depreciated. Or maybe even like, you talk to people again, look, other people have it worse, no doubt, but this isn't a competition. It's about solving and creating a different dynamic for everybody. There's people who, say they made, $160,000 a year, blah, blah, blah. They had a family, things are good. And now that same person, savings wiped out by Wall Street mismanagement and criminality. Now maybe they're in a position where they're making $50 a year and debt's piled up on a variety of things, and maybe they're sandwiched in between, on one hand, parents that they need to help because of the insufficiency, even though of course Medicare and Social Security are huge, but still there's a lot of senior poverty and problems. And then kids on the other end that can barely be in the job market and are suffocated with student debts. So, I mean, yeah, this way of doing the economy is only good for Wyatt Coke and Wyatt Coke-like things, right? Like it does not work for most people. Appreciate the call, man. Thank you so much. And speaking of which, though, here is a totally different perspective in the interest of being fair about the government shutdown, because maybe Vic was being a little bit melodramatic there when he talked about how people in the D.C. suburbs are starting to get really anxious because they can't pay bills, they can't financially plan. People up and down the economic scale are getting hit really hard by Mitch McConnell's complete, we already know, he's totally craven and immoral. His own political survival will always come first. He doesn't want to be primaried, so he'll keep the shutdown going. And of course, the demented milk brain bigot trust fund baby president is having a tantrum because, I don't know, Rush Limbaugh or some other fascist toxic influence on the culture basically got word to him that he isn't manning up on the border wall. So this is affecting real people's lives. But here is Kevin Hassett, who's an economic advisor to Donald Trump. He's appearing on the NewsHour on PBS, and he's going to give us another perspective on this. Let's check this out.
A couple of other topics. Is the government shutdown going to have a negative impact on the economy, particularly if it drags on?
Workers are furloughed, and right now it's about 25% of government workers are furloughed, which means that they are not allowed to go to work. But then when the shutdown ends, they go back to work and they get their back pay. Huge share of government workers were going to take vacation days, say between Christmas and New Year's. And then we have a shutdown, and so they can't go to work, and so then they have the vacation, but they don't have to use their vacation days. And then they come back, and then they get their back pay, then they're, in some sense, they're better off.
So no long-term economic effect?
Short-term, we could definitely see it in the numbers. But in terms of something that viewers should be nervous about, no, there's not going to be a negative effect.
Okay, yes, that is, I mean, that's a psychopath. That's a purely psychopathic response. It reframes a lot of things for me. I remember after I graduated college into the economic crisis, going through extended periods of scrapping together freelance jobs and being also just jobless and doing things like couch surfing. And I had no idea that I was really just on an extended vacation. I didn't have health care. I didn't always have enough food. I was in a constant state of stress. But really what I was doing was catching up on reading. That really framed... I mean, look, there's major macroeconomic long-term implications of an economy that's already pointing towards going into recession, just even on a cyclical level, right? Like going 8, 9, 10 years without a recession is highly unusual in capitalism. Capitalism is unstable. Capitalism fluctuates. Capitalism is fundamentally dangerous. Plus, none of the sort of big macroeconomic wrongs like fundamental reform of Wall Street, like betting on people's loans in a already compressed economy where people can barely survive and have to put things on credit cards. That's more than half the population, from education to cars to housing. We're already going towards that. Plus all of the other indicators that people don't talk about when they say, quote unquote, the economy, like mass inequality and gaps and all of the other structural problems that have been exacerbated by the big 2017 tax giveaway to the oligarchs of this country. But so a government shutdown and that impact on spending and planning and people's also natural desire to pull back from that is going to have economic effects in the long term. But that's also just the complete disregard for the sociopathic, the psychopath is right now people are not able to buy food necessarily. They're defaulting on loans. Some people are getting automated messages from the IRS because the IRS, of course, IRS workers, you can't call and get service from the IRS right now. So picture a scenario where you get an automated message from the IRS saying that it's going to give you an asset forfeiture if you don't pay, but then you can't call them to negotiate something. So that's the situation we're in. And Hackett they're having a vacation, which of course runs parallel to his stupid, moron, buffoon, jackass trust fund baby boss saying, well, you work it out, just like I worked it out by getting loans from dad.
This is standard Republican stuff, too. This is Jeb Bush after one of the Hillary-Bernie debates, talking about wanting a recession in D.C.
President Obama will leave office, and he will accumulate more debt than every other president before him combined. You heard the laundry list: a New Deal, free college education for everybody, free health care for children, expanding Social Security and Medicare, in-state tuition rates for illegal immigrants, similarly Obamacare subsidies for illegal immigrants. How the argument that you're going to give people something for free might be appealing to a lot of people. How do you make the argument that bankrupting the country is not a good idea to get there?
Well, I think we have the benefit now of all this, this philosophy of offering free things to people not working. The wrong track numbers in this country are historically high, and they stay high because people see declining incomes.
Right.
They've lost control. They don't think the system works for them. I think the better message is, let's disrupt Washington. Let's create a little bit of a recession in Washington, D.C. so that we can have economic prosperity outside of Washington. And I know how to do that because I was governor of a state I got to do that as governor. And the state led the nation in job growth 7 out of 8 years. That kind of attitude of cutting taxes, cutting government spending, reforming the things that are broken are what we need. And I think in this environment...
Okay, right. Yes, you're absolutely right. There's, again, nothing special about Trump here. This is all standard
and
issue
he's not doing
Republican
anything
bullshit.
they don't mind.
That's right.
Or he wouldn't be doing it, or he wouldn't be allowed to.
100%. We've seen. I mean, the handful of things like that are like, Paul Ryan would come out and be like, "You can't do this on tariffs," and they'd be like, yeah, saying something racist on Twitter. I don't want to get into that. I don't look at Twitter. Secret identity politics. I feel like I'm pretty sure. I hope this is a joke, but I will definitely read this. This IM should definitely be read in the Bernie or bust Bill Clinton voice. Your stance on the Kurds is fine, Michael, but have you ever considered who fucking cares about what happens in India? We almost elected a war criminal, for fuck's sake, and you're not giving Tulsi Gabbard due process either. Try that on, motherfucker. Tulsi Gabbard just apologized for saying all those things about electrocuting gay kids. Now it sounds like you owe her an apology. I don't know that she ever said she wanted to electrocute gay kids. I think she had defended gay conversion therapy, which is obviously highly abusive. I don't know if that involves electrocuting.
I think it can.
Jesus
I've heard it brought up in the Pence context, so yeah. Maybe that is just a joke, but I don't know. I think there might actually be some reality behind that.
Jesus Christ. Nick from Manitoba. Hey, Mr. Brooks, great show today. Have you ever considered going by the name Easy M because of your flawless finesse and ease with which you slay scumbag right-wing ideologues?
Michael's been trying to get us to
I've
call
been trying
him Easy M for
I've been trying to
working here.
Exactly. I said, "Hi, Matt. Welcome on board. Could you call me Easy M? I'm trying to make that a thing."
Yeah, I was interviewing with Sam, and Michael came in. He's like, "Hey, dude, you can call me Easy M."
Hey, dude, welcome. I'm Easy M. I would appreciate more international stories in my packet. Stay cool, bro. A Square. Great to meet you, by the way. Just jumping in now, Mike. You're so right. These people are psychopaths. So the shutdown is a vacation. Response is not surprising. This is another one. Remember Mama Bush's comment about Katrina working well for you people while folks were destitute and desperate in the Superdome. Exactly. Rabbi Cuck, since Reagan brought it up, I know Trump was hoping that the guests didn't eat all the fast food so he can take the leftovers upstairs for a bed feast afterward. That is so fucking disgusting.
There's gonna be little bits of
true.
fry. There's gonna be little bits of fry in that room for like the next 3 presidents.
I guarantee it. Definitely, I guarantee you, he was monitoring and limiting how much each person took. Miff Schmechter this week on Strategy, my co-host Bomb Karagrosis and I talked about 2020 with the wise Tom Watson. We ask, why are the Bernie bros insisting that brain power isn't the new currency of success? Is it because they want to harvest your brains and organs through Medicare for all? Maybe. Reminder, donate 100 to the podcast, and my good friend Billy D. Williams will give you free passes to use the phrase, "Black people are magic, Yas Queen."
Black Twitter ain't having no Bernie.
Oh my god!
What is Tom Watson? Like,
I don't know.
I know. I see him all the time. But I'm like, where's his platform coming from?
I'm blocked by him. That's the only reason I know who he is,
know
because
who he
I'll
is.
see somebody try to
No
dunk on
idea who he
him,
is.
and I assume it's like Jordan Peterson or. I don't have a lot of donuts that have blocked me, but Tom Watson has preemptively blocked me before I even knew who he was.
The thing that amazes me about like people like Tom Watson, who I assume, and I maybe I shouldn't say Tom Watson because I really have no idea what his background is, but it's like people who generated that donut Twitter thing through mostly being just like weird sort of adjacent Clinton people in some capacity. Like that's where like the sort of seed comes from. And one of the most damning indictments about the Clintons has always been, I mean, of course, they're records, but the thing that you could have just said, like before you even went anywhere else, would be like, who would spend time with Dick Morris or Lonnie Davis? I mean, like those are the most extreme ends. But then Robbie Mook, Terry McAuliffe, like I have a soft spot for Carville. But I mean, they accumulate, both of them, like the worst, from the top strategist to the like random internet troll. And so these are the same people that would, it's just very funny to watch people that like, a couple years ago would be like, oh, I don't know, like the conversation about welfare in the 90s was really different. And now today, all of a sudden, it'd be like, when Bernie supported expanding SNAP, that was racist. It's quite a bizarre group of people. Speaking of, look, sometimes I should just frame these segments as we're about to heavily criticize somebody, but really, this is in their own best interest. There's clearly a need for generational new blood in politics. Obviously, the big three, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, are providing that. On a grassroots level, Chokwe Lumumba, what he's doing as mayor. Unfortunately, for a variety of economic and cultural moment reasons, I think we could basically skip Gen X. I don't need the Cory Booker, Gillibrand new blood. That's okay.
You don't want to hear the Hakeem Nicks, Kamala Harris mixtape that's coming out about means testing?
That's really okay. I have to say, I don't want it because I just can't. Like, we got to save the substance. But Kamala Harris put out her, like, mood mix thing for one of those, like,
I think it was Late Night with Colbert.
Yeah, one of those things, right? And it was very, like, okay, here's the thing. Kamala Harris sticks out for me because I actually found, like, of all of the candidates trying to do an Obama, first of all, none of them should be trying to do an Obama impression. Barack Obama is Barack Obama. You're not Barack Obama. Barack Obama is one of the most talented politicians in the history of the United States of America, okay? And Beto O'Rourke is a little bit charming. He ain't Barack Obama. Cory Booker certainly is not Barack Obama. And Kamala Harris is definitely not Barack Obama, but actually she's more plausible than others in terms of like, okay, this is a likable person. I get it. She's smart. She's likable. And I even believe that she actually does listen to some of that music, right? And that it wasn't just curated by staffers. But when she talked about Sun is Shining by Bob Marley, I was like, how many people who were having a sun shining experience in California did you put in jail? Or like separate from their kids when you were an extremely aggressive prosecutor, including of these horrific drug laws in this country that have ruined so many lives. So, that being said, Nancy Pelosi, of the people that were on tap now, okay, progressives need to be really shrewd with her. She's already played them on some of these moves, no doubt. And her position on PAYGO is atrocious. But of what was on tap, Nancy Pelosi was the undoubted pick for Speaker of the House. And she's showing a certain degree of savvy if I could channel Ana Navarro for a second, in dealing with Trump. Her number two in the House, who has always, there's always been a certain tension between Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer, because Steny Hoyer wants the top job. He's never going to get it, or unless, something, terrible happens that we don't want to put out in a scenario. But he's not going to get that job. And I would like to invite him to retire very quickly. I'm sure he has a lovely family. I'm sure he has grandchildren. I'm sure he has hobbies. Seems like a nice enough Maryland guy, whatever. And it's definitely, what is it, King Lear, to like sit in the shade and talk of old times, something like that. Something in Shakespeare that I'm not remembering. But it's that time for Steny Hoyer. Check out this profound fail on 70% tax rates for the ultra wealthy that AOC is so effectively injecting into the mainstream.
Do you support raising the marginal tax rate on the wealthiest Americans to as high as 60 or 70%?
No, I don't. But having said that, we need to pay for what we buy. And I think that's a very important concept. And we need to get the deficit down. And we're going to have to pay for that. So while I think a 70% marginal rate, which, by the way, was in existence some decades ago, is not reasonable to attain, either politically or, frankly, I think from a policy standpoint, we need to make sure that we have a tax system that, in fact, provides the revenues necessary to pay for our priorities and our needs.
Okay, go away now. Go play golf. Thank you. Your services are no longer required. Goodbye. Steny Hoyer is on tape trying to bully a progressive candidate out of a Democratic primary who voted for the invasion of Iraq, who has cushy relationships with every type of corporate lobbyist in Washington imaginable, and has no significant legislative achievements, very few, if any, to his name, is out first playing to a politics of like 1991 with pablum deficit talk. Then you could tell how AOC has actually changed the context, because instead of just saying, oh, it's ridiculous, he is saying, well, we used to actually do this, and then providing no effective rebuttal as to why we shouldn't now, which, look, we shouldn't waste money on the deficit stuff. That wasn't on purpose. We shouldn't waste money on the deficit stuff. We have things we need. We need to transition the economy from fossil fuels. We need to create Medicare for all. We need to make college free. We need free public transportation. We need all of these basic, robust agendas immediately as part of a broader transition to a more durable and just world, obviously. But he didn't even have, he even could have said after the deficit problem, that's why we need to look seriously at tax rates. And you know what? It was only a couple decades ago that there were much higher rates and the economy did really well and blah, 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 blah. Dude, just retire. Just go away. Some lobbyists and staffers will miss you, but nobody else. To paraphrase Jeb Bush, I'd like to see a recession in Steny Hoyer's congressional offices. It's okay. Just leave. You were in Congress for decades, dude. You played your part.
Yeah, I don't like adding to the whole term limits conversation unless it's focusing more on the sort of unelected jobs in government.
Right.
Because I think it just helps conservatives. But there's a pretty strong case for it, especially, with regards to, yeah, I don't know. Definitely in the Senate, at least, we should term limit some of these people.
No doubt. I think we should term limit some people off of The View.
Or at least the Supreme Court. Let's start there.
I was going to make...
Hoyer was very against the term limits of leadership for the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet he was. Like, I've been shoveling fucking contracts to pharma companies and looking out for my district in narrow parochial ways and doing boring, uninspired TV hits for decades. And I want to keep goddamn doing it. I think there should be term limits for people on The View, particularly talentless trust fund babies. The Meghan McCain anxiety attack continues, but this time it's not about a tax on her trust fund baby riches. Now it's about race.
Mitt Romney has now done that. There's a list of people, right?
There's a list of people, but I'm just saying more people should come out. He should step down. I don't have patience
Steve King they're talking about.
for this. I don't think anybody has tolerance for this in any way. I would like us to move forward and pass.
Except for the entirety of the Republican Party that supported him in his reelection, including Chuck Grassley, who did a video for him. By the way, even as of a week ago, even as all the other people were jumping ship in the new media climate after the election, Ted Cruz didn't fully denounce Steve King, and I believe still said he would accept support from him. So your big, wide point, she's totally wrong on, and even narrow point, also wrong.
I don't have patience for this. I don't think anybody has tolerance for this in any way. I would like us to move forward and pass things that I thought were done in the 60s. Apparently they are not. He's a bad dude.
Should he be censored? Should he be censored?
Anything to get him the hell out of Congress, I don't really care.
Censored.
I'm serious. I don't want to keep talking about.
I'm sorry. I mean, dude, you didn't know that, like, this is what I mean. One need not watch all of Eyes on the Prize as a documentary, though they should. One need not read histories of the civil rights movement, or certainly, God forbid, something like, about the Black Panthers or something. I mean, whoa, I don't want her to actually have, a seizure from her, class anxiety and entitlement anxiety. But okay, I know we're in a world now where a guy like Jordan Peterson doesn't know the basics of civil rights law and is called the most important intellectual in the Western world. But you're the daughter of a guy who served in the Senate for decades. You comment on politics for a living, and you didn't know that this stuff was, quote unquote, taken care of in the 60s. And incidentally, you didn't also know that the party you support has been steadily gutting all of those things in Congress as well as the Supreme Court. I mean, of course, I'm sure she wouldn't know that part. But I mean, not even the 60s part? Come on.
Crap like this. I'm a political analyst. I don't want to keep reliving stuff that I thought we had passed by a long time ago.
Should he be? Can he be?
I'm sorry. I don't think other people want to relive it either. Like the people who are on the receiving end of it and aren't multimillionaire trust fund babies in a studio.
Should he be? Can he be tossed out?
Anything. I don't care.
That's the big question.
Can he be tossed out of Congress?
In history, there are only 20 people in Congress that have been pushed out. The problem that some people have is he wasn't voted in by a board. He was voted in by his
But if there's enough
constituents,
pressure from Republicans in the party and Mitch McConnell and leaders and people like you and I on TV, if pressure mounts, we've seen it in different fields. Why can't it be the same?
And they strip all of his duties, so you're in office, but there's really nothing you can actually do there. And that's what censoring is. So they've taken him off his committee, so he really doesn't have a job there.
This is the time to do it. I mean, I remember, Joy, you were pretty upset when Al Franken stepped down. And I think the Democrats wanted to take the moral high ground.
Yeah. And he did that willingly.
Did they get anywhere with it, right? But Republicans now, with this, I think, could make such a significant statement by forcing him to resign. But will Republicans now step up to the plate with Donald Trump? Because he has been using, I think, the border wall as sort of this dog whistle for racism. The government is still shut down, and I think it's all about, let's not let all these brown people in, right? Unless they're working for farmers, unless they're working in agriculture. So now will the Republican Party step up to him and say, we don't want this anymore?
There's 42% of this country that support the wall. Are they all racist?
That's a good question.
I'm asking you that. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think there are a lot of people that believe in security.
I don't know. Is Donald Trump racist?
But I'm not referring. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, so the point is, I mean, that's ridiculous.
I mean, of course, the answer to Donald Trump is yes.
And the answer to the 42% thing is, yeah, probably.
It depends. Look, it depends how. Look, if you define racism in any functional sense, the answer is yes.
Is holding racist ideas?
The answer is yes.
Because it's way higher than 42%.
Right. That's what. Look, the way Republicans want to define it, no, it isn't 42%.
Attend Klan rallies.
Yes. Now, if you want to define it in a more reality-based way, the answer would be like every single white person. And I'm not interested. Look, I'm not interested in the performance and the signaling politics of this, but the just historical reality of this country is one that white supremacist ideas have been encultured in this country. That's part and parcel of the economic and political development of this country. It's inescapable. It's the air we breathe. Now, can it be changed through politics? Is it a metaphysical static fact? No. I reject the argument that says it is. But it's the water we're swimming in. So this is actually a really good departure point here, because if on one hand you have the Republican just denial of racism, which is racism, which is that unless you're at a Klan rally, you're not racist, even though all of their leadership is racist, even though they're constantly running racist campaigns. And then, maybe there's a not equivalent in any way, because we're not drawing a false equivalency, but another dynamic that would sort of, oh, yeah, this is a good, this is an example. Chuck Johnson, who, as far as I know, I don't know very much about him. I've heard that he denies the Holocaust. I believe he got kicked off of Twitter for racist statements. If I understand correctly, here he is throwing the with Richard Spencer.
The definitely not white power sign.
Yeah, here he is throwing a white power sign next to Richard Spencer, and here he was yesterday walking with Representative Philip Rowe and Andy Harris. Those are two Congress Republican members of the House Republican Caucus. Again, this is a racist party. Then there's debates inside the left about the distinctions of how you deal with racism in terms of organizing spaces. And I mean, there's a lot of complexities to that debate, and I have critiques of how some of these things get played out that I don't think are smart, I don't think are effective. I think, again, there's a lot of nuances to this conversation. But I would actually say that the 42% number is a great meeting ground of having that is expanding it in a way that makes absolute sense, which is that if you have bought into a policy structure that is predicated on a conspiracy theory and is predicated purely on racial fear and paranoia, then yes, by any functional use of the term, you're racist. Now, could that change? Could some of these people be educated? So, I have to say maybe, because again, I don't want to assert it as a metaphysical static fact. But in that conversation, well, 42% of people are interested in security. No, they're not. And security, I don't think she's actually doing it in this way, but security is a dog whistle.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody knows what that means. And you have Tucker Carlson doing crypto Nazi talking points every night on the main right-wing channel in the United States on cable news, equating this stuff and actually spelling out what this actually means for people, which is my neighborhood looks different. Okay? And yes, that is indeed racism. So by any I actually love that 42% number, because it's like the real and broader answer is like, yes, everybody, as a historical contingency, we're all subsumed in it. If you've been, if your essentialist identity has been created as white, and that isn't, and I know some idiots, alt-right people, are like, see, they're blah, blah, blah. That's just historical reality. Read a fucking book.
This is why
But if you want to, just to button it, if you want to make that point really concrete, I think that's that 42% number is actually a really good way to operationalize it. Has your paranoia and delusion about this stuff gotten operationalized to such a point that you support shutting down the federal government to support a fake policy over an imaginary problem that purely flows out of that paranoia? Yup. Great. So we got 42% of people that need a whole hell of a lot of work.
This is why I always reference Ibram Kendi's Stamped from the Beginning.
Yeah.
Because the introduction talks about racist ideas he himself has had about black people. And I think for a lot of white people, they need to see a black person do something before they can figure out how to do it. So, yeah, check that out. But we have a guest on the line here also. Is he there? Sam?
Yeah, I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. What's up?
I'm just testing out this new connectivity. How does it sound?
Sounds good.
It sounds.
Does it really?
I would say it sounds like it sounds a bit thin, and there's a bit of maybe a background hum.
Like
What about-
static. I don't know about
What about
hum.
now?
Better.
How's that? Is that better?
A little bit better, yeah.
Yep.
A little bit better? All right, I'm going to just change it. Also, fuck Steny Hoyer.
Right.
But, let me just change the way that I'm talking on the phone. Hold on one second. Let me... folks, it's a live technical test.
You must have been
Appreciate
dealing
people's
with
patience.
you must have been dealing with Steny Hoyer for a while yourself, actually.
No, he's always been a corporate
No, that's
hack.
what I'm saying. Like dealing with him as just a total hack and problem.
The biggest problem that Steny Hoyer has created is because of the enormous amount of financial money that he gets as a congressman. He had the ability to go around and raise money for other people, which is why he was such an effective whip. And for a long time on the left, before there was technology that made it possible to filter money efficiently, small donors, to someone like AOC or to, you know, other Congress people, this was a real disadvantage on the left because, you know, Jim McGovern from Worcester, who's a very progressive member of the House,
He's great.
he can't go around and raise money for other House members in the way that Steny Hoyer can because he's got to raise money for himself.
Right.
And so, but that dynamic is changing. Speaking of dynamic, let me unplug this and try this dynamic. How does it sound in this situation?
I think that's even better.
Bolsarino.
Does it sound worse?
No, it sounds better.
Yeah, it sounds better.
It sounds better?
Yep.
And you're not getting any feedback from when you speak, are you, Michael?
No, I'm not getting any feedback. It's sometimes I don't know what the right. There's like a slight clicking. or
There's a
something.
little bit
Oh,
of
wait,
a digital pop, a little bit.
There's a digital pop, and there is feedback now.
Well,
Yep.
we can hear Michael's mic a little bit.
Yeah.
turning.
What is that? You're hearing yourself come back?
Yeah, just in the background.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just how about now, Michael? Can you hear yourself?
Yes.
Still a problem?
Yep. Let's see. Now, no. Yeah, it's a problem. Yep.
Okay, interesting. All right. Well, screw Steny Hoyer and
Wait. Hold on 1 second, Sam. Listen to this drop. Don't worry. We saved everything for tomorrow, but listen to this.
well, hold on for 1 second because I'm not sure I can. Matt's got to make sure that he filters the audio into
okay. It's all right.
Zip. Go ahead.
You ready?
I don't even care about this. I don't even care about.
I know what that is. You're not supposed to play that yet.
It was just the drop.
We're just
the
okay.
drop.
Yeah, we're
just
saving
the
it.
drop. Don't worry.
Have
While
you-
we saving that, we got like 3 brilliant mashup videos.
I
that
know.
the
I was just
community's
about to
already
say
made.
that. I saw that. I saw one last night at like midnight, and I stayed up until like 3 a.m. to watch it 100 times. All right. Well, folks, don't forget, tomorrow we're going to be starting early, 11 a.m.
David Feldman. All right. Thanks, Sam.
Okay. Talk to
All
you.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I had no idea what you were... I thought you were putting something in that had to do with the border wall polling. I was like, what the hell is that? Okay, wait. So is there... I mean, clipping-wise,
We covered
this
it.
clip is over. Okay. Now, speaking of where Abby Huntsman and Meghan McCain, if they're curious, might get some decent information on what's really happening with the racial nature of that 42% of craziness that support this wall, Tucker Carlson would be a great place to start. Now, there's this whole broader argument about how do you respond to when Tucker Carlson makes a point that's right, that's generic, about financialization, about capitalism, or even sometimes about intervention. Now, my point has always been, well, unfortunately, you got to look at the broader context. And you got to look at what he's really smuggling in with those arguments, which are almost always xenophobia and bigotry and not redistribution. And even in a military sense, and even in an intervention sense, almost all of his content, seems to me, has been just trying to sort of clean up an Assad image, as an example. I don't see a broader anti-war effort there. And let me give you a contrast. If Tucker Carlson was really serious about this anti-interventionist agenda, and I actually know, I read a profile of Tucker Carlson several years ago where he said some things about Iran that you would not expect to hear from a right-wing pundit. If Tucker Carlson was really on an anti-interventionist game, he would be pounding the Trump administration and the Republicans for destroying the Iran deal and for trying to foment conflict with Iran. He would be throwing, maybe he did comment on the report that John Bolton asked to draw up plans to bomb Iran. Maybe he did. But that would be a nightly topic. In fact, obviously we're so overwhelmed that we haven't covered that nearly enough. That was appalling, horrifying. Of course, you could talk about intervention in Syria and critique it, but look at the context. Look at the fascism he smuggles in when he talks about real economic issues. And if he was really into a global anti-war push, he would be putting every single public official on notice, almost all of whom right now in the Republican Party, but certainly Democrats and certainly Gulf and Israeli lobbying groups, that he's going to be the voice in far-right media for the Iran deal. Now, that would be something that would be real, and I frankly wouldn't have anything to say about it. I would tip my hat every single segment if that was the case. But it ain't there. Another thing that people are really fixated on is this Russia thing. And I think that maybe in this office, we might have the least interest in the Russia story of anybody, because I'm not interested in obsessively debunking it the way some people seem to be. And I certainly don't know. It might be a relatively unimportant story relative to everything going on in the world. And the only way to really understand it, to the extent it's real, is another question of oligarchy and influence peddling. And we'll see. That's really the other bottom line. We're going to see. The guy's going to write his report. We'll see. There's very little to talk about before then.
Yeah, Kremlinology about it is just a waste of time.
We'll see. We'll see. Now, look, I have no problem using, I think to the extent it's been used to hurt Trump, that's great. I have no problem with it. And to the extent it's been used to actually try to have a seriously intensified hostile relationship with Russia, that's a problem. Although, incidentally, I would say to other people who are constantly, sort of freaking out about this, Trump stepping out of and talking about reigniting a new arms race is actually way more important than a couple of targeted sanctions. I hope people are aware of that, which I don't necessarily support either. And in fact, I would have voted against the Russia sanction package because there was an Iran sanctions package in it as well, and the Iran deal is way more important than this. So all that being said, look at Tucker Carlson coming up with the most incredible reason to oppose the Green New Deal. And I thought he was a fucking anti-war voice, might be one way I've heard put.
You might also encourage the U.S. to adopt a self-destructive energy policy. You'd have the American government sharply restrict the exploration of oil and natural gas in the name of the environment so that America produces less energy. Why would you do that? Because global energy prices would rise and the U.S. would have to import more. Who would that benefit? Russia, a petrostate. Their economy is dependent on energy. But Trump, and this is weird behavior for a secret Russian agent, has done just the opposite of that. The United States, for the first time in my lifetime, is an energy exporter. In fact, it's the largest producer of oil and gas in the world. Is that good for Russia? No, it's not. Who's pushing the opposite? Oh, weirdly, it's the left. They're the ones pushing a Green New Deal that would have this country shutting down oil and gas wells across the nation. Someday we're going to look back in shame and confusion and wonder how so many supposedly smart people went completely off the deep end.
There's some truth to that last part, and but that truth is going to be quite broadly spread and talked about, and it's also going to include trust fund baby heir cynical media commentators who attempted to midwife fascism in the United States. That might be part of a broader group of people who went off of the quote-unquote deep end. Now, look, Trump hits this talking point all the time, and everybody who knows that the questions about Russia and what Trump may or may not be doing about Russia don't revolve around energy questions. They revolve around questions about his aides, around business deals, around why he doesn't want the conversations he had with Putin to be available even for his own advisors, right? And again, I say this as somebody who's really not particularly interested in this at the moment until we know more information. And then there's the other point that goes back, and I forget the name of the guy. He was on the show a couple of months after Trump won, and he's an energy guy. And he said, look, this is an energy administration. And even if superficially there's a conflict with Russia, these are Saudi Arabia, Russia, the United States, they want to keep expanding drilling and powering forward with the petroeconomy, damning all ecological and survival of human species implications, right? So if they're teamed up on these broader questions of blocking a fundamental change to the energy economy, and don't forget that all of these main energy companies are global operators that profit off of energy deals across the world. It's in a global market. That's the proper way of looking at it versus these small-scale stories about energy exports, which aren't particularly significant to begin with. And, of course, God forbid, are, who would ever even want to bring this up, destroying our ability to survive as a species and harming the United States right now.
Well, and to talk about changing the government wanting to change our energy, policies or infrastructure, fracking itself was a Department of Energy invention, basically.
Right.
That's where the research and development came for it. You can find that. That's on energy.gov.
Right.
So, the idea that you wouldn't also use the government to say, hey, maybe we should, start producing the fuck out of solar panels or wind. Of course you do that. Of course.
Precisely.
It's not, this should not be a no-brainer.
And you can even do, that's the whole, Tom Friedman style, I would never frame it in these terms because that's not the point, but you could say, yeah, we need to be, and, look, it's not the point ultimately, but actually in a narrow sense it might be. If you're running for a campaign for president, it might be. We need to take over. China's leaving us in the dust when it comes to things like solar panels and breakthroughs in battery and other innovative energy-efficient technologies. So instead of despoiling what remains of our natural ecosystems to score small points on a mid-sized regional economic power, maybe we should be trying to figure out how to incentivize us keeping up with the next phase of industrial development, which is sustainable energy, which China, for all of its unbelievable problems in the environment, is leading us on. But I thought he was, opposed to that sort of any competition with Russia. You're calling from a 610 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello, you're on.
Is this me?
Yeah, this is you. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Sophia. I'm calling from Manhattan.
Hey, Sophia, what's on your mind?
Sorry, I was just in the office. I have to step out. But I'm calling about two things. One serious, one not very serious. The first thing is the shutdown. I'm active in the Central Brooklyn DSA, and we were talking about the hunger strike that started 2 days ago in a prison in Lower Manhattan. And I was trying to find information about it, but the only thing I can find is one New York Times article. And since, prisons are so segregated and isolated, I wonder how on the outside you can show solidarity. And I don't know, what can you do from the outside?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I'll look into it. I have no idea. I mean, other than I think on some level, report and talk about the conditions of prisons is the easy answer, but it's also probably basically true. And then, agitate for the changes that they're asking for. That's probably it.
Right. So the strike is directly related to the shutdown because since the shutdown, they have not been able to have family visits and they have not had access to medication or I think physician visits. And I think even they can't speak with lawyers. And so this is the first I was hearing about it today. I read this article that came out 2 days ago about them starting the hunger strike. And I'm trying to find information about it. Are they still striking? There's no developments happening, obviously, because the government's still shut down. But anyway, just something I wanted to bring up.
Thank you.
Also, I guess on a more lighthearted note, I was kind of well, obviously everyone was upset to see like the smear campaign that the right is putting up against AOC, and I was really horrified to see like the fake nudes that were leaked by the Daily Caller, and kind of like it felt like trying to discourage women and women of color from running for office, like that we will manufacture revenge porn to leak if you try to seek power and affect change. But I think it's really kind of ridiculous for Tucker Carlson to be making fun of like an embarrassing dance video when are you aware that he was like on Dancing with the Stars in like 2007?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out.
Yeah, I came to
really? Seriously?
Yeah, but oh my God, you didn't know this?
No, I did not know this.
I
That's
was
awesome.
Probably, I was probably in like high school or something. But
Right.
so I came to your show at the Bell House, and I wanted to tell you guys about this, but it was a bad rush to leave at the end. And but yeah, he was voted off in the first week because he like was the worst. And I think maybe his mom, like,
Oh my God, we have it up here. Jesus fucking Christ, dude.
are you
Oh my
playing
God,
it?
and he's dancing. This is some type of this is Mexican music, right? I don't know, I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember.
But it's
been
ironic.
so long since I've seen it.
Look, he's got
But I
the
remember-
unbuttoned shirt going on. He looks Yeah, he looks like a
On this first week of competition, the couple with the lowest score and therefore leaving right now.
All right, come on. Let's get to it. All right, he's leaving.
This person made a crappy video.
Yes, he's leaving. I get it. He was
Well,
bad. All right, that was
anyway,
incredible.
I think
Thank
the
you.
like highlight for me,
Yes.
even though I watched it probably a decade ago, was I think his mom like came and watched the show, and she was like doing an interview about how badly he had done, and she was like, "Oh, Tucker," she was so embarrassed. I don't know, just some old lady did an interview about how bad Tucker Carlson was at dancing. So I thought it
Wow.
was really weird that he was like, you know, making fun of AOC for, you know, a fun dance video.
It also
Another-
might explain, though, why he's such an asshole if his mom didn't have his back like that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
What were you going to say, Brennan?
Another early exit on Dancing with the Stars of conservative ideology. Rick Perry. Also,
Oh, I did know about that one. Rick Perry was
really?
there. Yeah, Rick Perry definitely. But that seems more plausible because he seems like kind of like, hey man, let's dance. Like, but
I could two-step.
I could do it. I could do that. But yeah, what I was gonna say too. Like, I also just want to say, like, look, this isn't really the point. You know, like it was a fake photo. They've done all. It's creepy. It's weird. Everything you said. But I also just want to like put a marker down for like I don't care. Like I would care. Look, if somebody hacked and leaked a nude photo of AOC, I would care because that's a total abuse and illegal, in fact, right? But I don't care if somebody has a nude picture and they're in Congress.
No,
I don't
exactly.
care
I don't,
at all.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to like do a complete overhaul of how like the entire American society views sexuality for it to not matter. But it's like,
right.
But yeah, I don't care that. Like, I wouldn't care if it was real. I just, it's so.
The point why it matters is that it's sort of it has a chilling effect on people who might think like maybe I should
right.
run for Congress.
Well, yeah,
too.
that's what she was saying, which I totally agree with. But I want to just say, like, as part of the effort to counteract that chilling effect, fight it on all fronts. But one front I want to fight it on is I don't care. Like, I want to at least put down that marker on. All right, thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Do you want to quick watch that David Cameron saying that thing
Yes,
about Yorkshire?
I do. This goes back to Libby Watson from earlier today. And then we'll take one more call, and then we're going to wrap up.
If we just thought people in Yorkshire hated everyone else, we didn't realize they hate each other so
much.
One bit of quick news.
Yes.
One quick bit of news.
Tell me.
Anna Eshoo, who is the Energy and Commerce Subcommittee Chair, has told reporters that she is walking back her vow for a Medicare for All hearing. And let's play the game. What does she get? Where does she get most of her money from?
The pharmaceutical industry.
You've fucking nailed it, Michael. 100, like,
that was
by
quite a
far.
stretch.
Yeah.
So put
Anna Eshoo. So find her on social media.
Yeah. Can we put her on Anna Eshoo on social media? This is somebody that you should be, respectfully talking to, and also respectfully pointing out where her pharmaceutical and her campaign contributions come from, because apparently they're more important than your life.
Flood all of her recent tweets, but like Michael said, like there's no reason to try to edgelord about how radical you are in these sorts of comments, right?
No,
yeah.
Be polite, respect, go clean for Gene in these, and look up that reference. But it was the people who, Eugene McCarthy, who turned out to be a bad candidate, actually, or a bad politician in a lot of ways, but he was the anti-war candidate in '68, along with RFK, but he ran first. And he was the only one challenging Humphrey from an anti-war platform. And the hippies, basically shaved their beards, cut their hair, put on suits, and went clean for Gene, because it was like, we want this guy to actually win. We don't want to offend somebody door we're knocking on in Keene, New Hampshire. So be polite, but certainly flood her with your concerns.
Screenshots of her donors is good.
Yes,
sort of
screenshots
stuff.
of her donors. Sincere questions about why she's reversing herself. Maybe a reminder of the health issues you or your family or the country face. And ask her what's more important, people's lives or her campaign contributions.
She's saying priority is to shore up Obamacare right now.
That is
so
the most bullshit. See, this is actually a good thing to point out. And when they first took everything over and they were trying to gut Obamacare, see, there were some people in the center and the resistance, whatever, who were trying to use the fact that they were trying to gut Obamacare and destroy the Medicaid expansion, which undoubtedly would have, what Trump and Graham and Cassidy and McConnell and Ryan and all the Republicans were trying to do, would cost conservatively tens of thousands of lives. And it was an emergency, and it needed to be fought and defeated. And actually, it was proof, even further proof of concept of why we need Medicare for all, right? But there was a narrow sense, and what was there was a couple of months there where, of course, still advocate for Medicare for all, but follow Bernie's lead. Bernie is the main Medicare for all guy, and he put his energy into staving off an emergency that would have immediately cost lives. As soon as Democrats take control of the House, that talking point is done. There's no bill to overturn Obamacare. There's a legal case, which we could deal with for sure. That's important. But there's no legislative action. There's nothing on the table. That's not happening. Medicare for all is the issue now. And that talking point, anybody who says it is trying to hustle you. All right, last call of the day. You're calling from a 902 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name's Ben. I'm calling from Nova Scotia.
Hey, Ben, what's on your mind?
Well, I have two things. The first thing is a pretty funny story that I saw. I tweeted it to you. You probably didn't see it a couple days ago. It's from a Canadian satirical website called The Beaverton. I don't know if anyone's heard of that.
No.
But it did this story, and the title is Schick responds to Gillette's Me Too ad by releasing misogynistic razor. And one of the quotes from the story says, "The blade comes with a built-in speaker which plays Jordan Peterson reading from his books to smoothly reaffirm pre-existing prejudices."
Okay, and I'll check it out. What's the second one, my friend?
Well, the second thing is if you didn't know, there is an election coming up in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening. It's going to be happening this fall.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to say that it's not going to be a very exciting election for progressives. The reason for that is Trudeau is still fairly popular.
Right.
And the New Democratic Party, which is traditionally the more left party, it's fairly weak right now. The leader, Jagmeet Singh, he doesn't have a seat in Parliament. It's going to there's going to be a by-election at the end of February, and he's running in it, so hopefully he'll get in there. But the problem is that in Canada, it's very rare that you only get a one-term prime minister. Canadians are very easygoing and like to give people second chances. And since there isn't really any people who are exciting the left, it's probably going to be fairly low turnout as well. Because in 2015, the last election, at that time, Stephen Harper had been in for 10 years, and there was a big amount of change wanted. And so, yeah, it's not going to be a very exciting election for people on the left.
All right. We'll follow more of that, but that was my sense of it, too. I appreciate the call, and vote NDP.
I do want to say that I say vote Green, actually.
Oh, okay. We'll call in another time and explain that. Okay. Thanks a million for the call. Appreciate it. Thank you.
We need a DS Canada.
We do need a DS Canada, don't we? So, all right, let's read a few IMs, and then we're going to take our leave. Just 1 second. Okay, wait. Sorry about that. Okay. Let's see. Wait, no, I already read. Here I am. Monkey Fighter. Hey, Mike, if you're missing Gorka, is a new daily radio talk show on Salem Radio Network.
Not missing him that much.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, that's... If we expand and have like another couple of people on the research staff, that's the type of thing that I will request.
We can't.
We don't have the resources.
Might be an
for
intern
that.
job.
Yeah, these are indulgences. Like the only way we can sort of justify indulging in some of these figures, like for instance, Laura Loomer recently did something that was horrible, and with regards to a Pelosi protest by basically entrapping some workers that she found at like a Home Depot. Anyway, we're not going to talk about it because we don't want to give attention to her. And Gorka is relevant when he was like a sort of actual White House advisor and appearing on Fox.
Yeah, I mean, he's just fallen really fast. Like, he's not even on Fox anymore.
We're all
It's
about
just,
proximity to power.
Yeah, it's hard to justify. Exactly. Leftist European, is Bernie going to run? When do you think he's going to announce it? I do think he's still going to run. I don't know when, but I do. I do, actually. But I do think there's something to the scenario that I think he's kind of watching how some of these dynamics play out and seeing how Warren does. I've maybe be persuaded by that, but certainly hope he'll run. Brother from Brooklyn, what do you think of Ojeda as a candidate? From a purely electoral standpoint, Democrats are going to focus on the Rust Belt. Maybe he could be the best guy to take up that mantle. I mean, I like Richard Ojeda in some ways. I like Richard Ojeda. I don't know. I don't see it. I mean, that's just the bottom. I don't have any problem. Like, it's not hostile. It is so he's just not going to be the Democratic nominee. What I'll say is, if he's in the lane that Jim Webb was in, and they're very different. That's kind of my point. That's an upgrade, right? Like, if the guy up on stage is talking about how the Democratic Party lost its roots is a labor organizer guy from West Virginia, that's awesome. But I don't think that's I don't know. I'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Let's see. Wait a second. Oh, I shut down the IMs by accident.
I feel like with Ojeda and people like that I am, except for like Bernie, I'm kind of whoever can make some actual momentum happen in a political realm. And Ojeda, like, people might suspect, like I do, that maybe his policies can do some of that, but also like he hasn't been historically great on women's issues, and a lot of the recent elections have been women's driven elections. So like I feel like it's wait and see what they do in the playoffs, basically. Before. Like, this is like the preseason.
Yeah, I mean, and there's just no, like, the candidates that we're talking about, the ones we like, the ones we don't like, are, like they're in the game. And it's like, I got to say, like, I'm assuming Richard Ojeda, I think he's got some following and respect in West Virginia. He still lost his House seat by double digits. And then besides that, like, you know, there's people who watch progressive YouTube, and that's cool. I mean, again, like, it's not a beef, but like, you know, I mean, this is a person who might not poll more than 1%. So, you know, and I don't think, I mean, this isn't an election where you have to say, I don't know, Dennis Kucinich is polling at 1%, but listen to his ideas because nobody else will come out there and say that we should have Medicare for all and shouldn't have invaded Iraq. Like, you got Sanders, you got Warren, and then even more generously, you have a whole bunch of people that I don't like in many ways, but they'll represent different things. At times, Harris will represent things well that I like. At times, Gabbard will represent things well. Like, I'm just, between having a very good possible candidate, a decent candidate, another possible decent candidate, and a whole bunch of very flawed candidates who are still generally, I would say, kind of an upgrade. I don't see it. All right. Last call, last IM of the day. Winnipeg Craig, never vote Green in Canada. They're not consistently pro-labor. It's more anti-establishment than anti-capital. Debate me, Mr. Green Caller. It's funny. I mean, I think ecology in many ways probably should be the central organizing principle, but on the other hand, a lot of iterations of green politics, whether the sort of some of the, you know, either have become sort of business friendly or neoliberal or even just sort of like silly and conspiratorial. So I don't know. I've heard great things about the Canadian Green Party, but I think I would track NDP myself. All right, everybody, don't forget 11 a.m. start time tomorrow. See you then.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid.